Tonight, Ole Anderson's cousin, Arn Anderson, makes his impactful debut. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. I am your host, Tyler Vance himself, and you're not. It's March 9th, 1985. Last week in the World Wrestling Federation, it was the first ever road to WrestleMania. Over in the National Wrestling Alliance, the Boogie Woogie Maniac Jimmy Valiant returned and threatened Paul Jones. And the American Dream Dusty Rhodes broke his promise regarding NWA Television Champion Tully Blanchard's Perfect 10, slapping Baby Doll on international television. We'll be tuning into the WWF's flagship show, Championship Wrestling, first this week, where both Vince McMahon and the living legend Bruno Sammartino greet us on commentary and prepare to call the first match. AJ Petruzzi faces off against the Junkyard Dog in singles action. A hip toss from JYD on Petruzzi sees the mangy mutt return to his feral roots, dropping down on all fours and then ramming his thick skull into his opponents. AJ Petruzzi does try to fight back with a headbutt of his own, but only ends up knocking himself out momentarily instead. A third headbutt probably has now resulted in a severe concussion for Petruzzi, who is thankfully put away moments later with JYD's thump. The WWF update this week focuses on Andre the so-called Giant, who Lord Awful Alfred Hayes describes as
the recent victim at a humiliating hair-cutting incident
for how the Heenan family cut the 8th wonder of the world's hair last December. They did Andre a favor, if you ask me. Lord Awful Hayes, he could use some of the Heenan family's work too. The Lord of Butt Kissing continues to do just that, as he goes on to state that he has no doubt in his mind that Andre the so-called Giant can not only slam Big John Studd, the true giant of the WWF, but also walk away with Bobby the Brain Heenan's $15,000 reward. Okay, pal. Peter Pompeii is up next in singles action, and he's facing off against a returning Mr. Fuji's client in the magnificent Muraco, and I am thankful that Mr. Fuji is A-OK. If you recall, Mr. Fuji was absent last week during Jim the Anvil Neidhart's match, having his friend and associate Jimmy Hart stand in for him. I would personally like to thank Mr. Jimmy Hart for his tremendous work during Mr. Fuji's illness. Well done, sir. Mr. Fuji's teachings have been perfected by the Magnificent One, who goes on to absolutely dominate his opponent, administering as much pain as possible and taking sheer joy out of doing so before finally putting Peter Pompeii away with a modified tombstone piledriver. Charlie Fulton and Hillbilly Jim go head-to-head next, and as Jim extends his hand in a gesture of stupid sportsmanship, which is respectfully declined by Fulton, that greasy, disgusting hillbilly decides to show everyone that it was all just a show anyways, forcefully shaking Charlie Fulton's hand regardless. Clearly, Hillbilly Jim doesn't know how to take no for an answer, so when he goes on to inevitably lose a wrestling match in the future, who knows, it could even be tonight, we're going to see the biggest temper tantrum you could possibly imagine. Charlie Fulton bounces off of Hillbilly Jim after attempting several shoulder blocks, so that mountain goof goes off to show what he thinks is an impressive physique, but what I think is truly hot garbage. Fulton then latches on a full Nelson, but Jim is able to break free, before going on to perform more circus tricks with a cartwheel. A failed body slam attempt from Charlie Fulton follows, whereas he instead goes on to get slammed himself by Hillbilly Jim before submitting moments later to the Hillbilly's bear hug. The next WWF Tag Team Champions, mark my words, are in action next. The Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff, accompanied by their manager Classy Freddie Blassie, take on the brothers O'Grady, Brian and Sean. Volkoff is no longer asking the animals in the crowd to show their respect when he sings the Soviet-Russian national anthem, considering he knows what they're truly all about. Brian and Sean O'Grady are nothing more than stand-ins for the current WWF Tag Team Champions of the American Express, consisting of Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo, showing just how classy Freddie Blassie's men will become the next champions and prove me and my soothsaying ways correct. But how, Mr. Vance? Show me your ways. How do you know this? It's easy. All it will take is the Iron Sheik's back suplex into the camel clutch, and bam! We have new champions. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff rejoins Piper's Pit to talk with his upcoming tag team partner for WrestleMania's main event in Rowdy Roddy Piper, who of course also has Cowboy Bob Orton present. The two of them have a lot to say regarding their opponents, the WWF Champion Hulk Hogan and Mr. T.
You think in 3 miserable weeks you can get in good enough shape? Do they know that Ace, our bodyguard's going to be in our corner? I wonder what they do training. I wonder if they show each other where the hair shouldn't go.
He says he jumps on and grabs those big 200-pound dumbbells, hangs and bangs. Well, that's a big lie. I don't care how much weight, Hogan. I'll make you eat every plate you can lift. Mr. T, what you have done, boy, and I spell that B-O-Y, you have stuck your nose into somebody else's business. Myself and Roddy Piper and Ace, we're going to do something to you, son, that you'll never forget.
We'll take your life and not even think twice about it.
The main event of WWF Championship Wrestling sees the WWF Intercontinental Champion Greg the Hammer Valentine, accompanied by Manager of the Year contender in Jimmy Hart, take on Aldo Marino in a non-title match. As the match gets underway, Marino is overwhelmed by mat wrestling from Valentine before going on to be dropped neck first over the top ring rope by the Hammer. Greg Valentine proceeds to hit a reverse atomic drop before hitting 2 massive elbows and then latching on the figure 4 leg lock seconds later to force Aldo Marino to submit. Backstage, Jack Reynolds is having a word with the true giant of the WWF in Big John Studd, along with the patriarch of the Heenan family, Bobby the Brain Heenan himself. They have accepted Andre the so-called Giant's challenge to attempt to slam the true giant of the WWF in Studd at WrestleMania. But we already know how this is going to turn out. I'm not a full soothsayer just yet, but no one, and I mean no one, living or dead on this earth can slam John Studd, and that is a Tyler Vance guarantee.
What's going to happen is I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to drive you right through the center of the ring, and that's going to be it for you.
Next up, Mean Gene Okerlund is standing by with the former WWF Women's Champion in Wendi Richter, along with her manager, pop star Cyndi Lauper. Back at the War to settle the score, Cyndi Lauper herself provoked the fabulous Moolah into defending herself, causing an altercation at ringside, which Richter attended to, all in an effort to save her manager. This action, though, was the Achilles heel for the WWF Women's Champion at the time, considering with her back turned, all Leilani Kai had to do was roll her up, and wham bam, thank you ma'am, we have a new WWF Women's Champion still to this day. During the melee at ringside, Moolah ended up striking Richter when she grabbed the fabulous Moolah's hair, all in an effort to defend Cyndi Lauper. This, according to Cyndi Lauper, was a line that the fabulous Moolah should have never crossed.
I don't care. I don't care. You could choke me because I believe in what I believe in, and that's all I care about.
Like they say, girls just want to have fun. I'm going to have fun all over you, and you're going to be dancing like an organ grinder's monkey.
So you better watch out, you ugly little thing.
Right.
You better watch out because you're getting old.
All right.
You shut your filthy mouth. I bet David Wolf has been all over those lips, man. Disgusting. The fabulous Moolah is beautiful. NWA Worldwide Wrestling is up next, and thankfully, we get a break from that pissant, crotchety David Crockett, considering both Tony Schiavone and Johnny Weaver are on commentary this week. First up, a third of the NWA World 6-Man Tag Team Champions, Krusher Kruschev, who's accompanied by both the Russian Bear and the Russian Nightmare at ringside, takes on Mark Fleming one-on-one. The American-born Soviet Union citizen starts the match off by slamming Fleming's shoulder into the corner before latching on a hammerlock. Mark Fleming is then draped over the top rope neck first before nearly getting decapitated by Khrushchev's Russian sickle, submitting seconds later to the Cobra Clutch. Last week I spoke about the NWA United States Heavyweight Champion Chief Wahoo McDaniel's challenge to the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, in an Indian strap match. Flair said he'd accept the match, however, the NWA as a governing body refuses to allow the NWA World Heavyweight Championship to be put on the line, something that I think is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. The gall of NWA President Bob Geigel to not only say that, but also say that he's given the idea a lot of consideration, but ultimately...
No, I gave this a lot of thought and looked back a long way. There's nothing in the past that I could judge this from. No, Wahoo McDaniels, you cannot meet Ric Flair for the world title with Indian strap match rules.
Ric Flair is so excited by the news that he runs down to the ring and rips his shirt off. But not so fast. While you might be having the time of your life, Nature Boy, Chief McDaniel is furious, and he has every right to be so. Last year, Chief Wahoo McDaniel was stripped of the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship after he defeated Ricky Steamboat. It was not only a controversial, but unprecedented decision, which still has me harboring mistrust and a grudge over the NWA's decision on the Chief's behalf. Ultimately, Chief Wahoo McDaniel subsequently entered a tournament and regained the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship, a championship that he's held to this day. Now not only proving that he's the man, but the true #1 contender to the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, Chief Wahoo McDaniel is once again screwed by the NWA. An Indian strap match is in no way more dangerous than the steel cage that Ric Flair won his NWA World Heavyweight Championship in against Harley Race at the inaugural Starrcade in November of 1983. With all of this in mind, Chief Wahoo McDaniel absolutely unloads on Flair as the two get in the ring. Just when it seems that the Nature Boy is going to get an upper hand on Chief McDaniel, the Chief's longtime friend and associate Tully Blanchard comes to his aid. Together, the awesome twosome teach Ric Flair a lesson he'll never forget.
Indian step, he's gonna whip him, he's gonna beat him, as the champion is held there by Tully Blanchard.
Several wrestlers rush down to the ring in an attempt to save Flair. However, they instead are beaten. Mind your own business. Six-man tag team action is next as Dick Slater, Avalanche, Buzz Tyler, and Magnum TA, basically a rogues gallery of Chief Wahoo McDaniel's failed challengers for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship, take on Joel Deaton, Doug Vines, and the Golden Terror. The whole match is simply a showcase of what Magnum, Slater, and Tyler are all capable of, winning without even breaking a sweat following Magnum TA's belly-to-belly suplex. Here he is, the cousin of Ole Anderson. Arn Anderson takes on Sam Houston in singles action next. The only other person that I've been as excited to see debut recently has been Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who did not let me down, so I have equally as high hopes for Double A. Houston is able to hit an early hip toss on Anderson, however it quickly backfires as Double A is able to catch Sam Houston coming off the ropes with an elbow to the gut. A double backbreaker follows, along with three body slams, all with Houston's arm tucked behind his back so Double A can eliminate it from the picture. Immediately following the final slam, Arn Anderson latches on a shoulder lock, and thanks to the extensive damage done to his arm, Houston is forced to submit in seconds. Tony Schiavone is next backstage alongside the NWA television champion Tully Blanchard and his perfect 10, Baby Doll. Blanchard just wants to know one thing. Are you proud of yourself, Dusty Rhodes, for how you behaved last week?
Yeah, that's just like you, big man, macho man Dusty Rhodes, and then you gotta strike a woman.
Since the American Dream broke his promise to the American people, Tully Blanchard will no longer play the role of prey.
I'm gonna chase you You've been chasing me for the television championship for a long time. Now I'm chasing you. Dusty Rhodes, you're going to be mine, and you're going to be all mine. And when you're down, I'm going to have Baby Doll step over you, and she's going to paintbrush you. No man can claim he's from Texas and would hit a Texas tin like that.
Superstar Billy Graham, who's always ready to protect his manager Paul Jones, faces off against Frank Lang next. Graham is a kung fu master, having achieved a black belt in every single known mixed martial art to mankind, and employs several of those devastating maneuvers in the following match. From the dreaded ring rope stranglehold to the Kung Fu Nelson, which secures Graham his win. As Jones gets rid of the unsuccessful Lang, the Boogie Woogie Maniac Jimmy Valiant appears from nowhere, beating on Billy Graham, and then turns his attention to Paul Jones, latching a sleeper onto the manager, but thankfully, the Barbarian is nearby and comes to his manager's rescue. Outnumbered, Valiant goes on to suffer a diving headbutt from the Barbarian off of the top rope not once, not twice, but 3 times, while also being held down by Graham and Jones. The trio retreat, since minding your own business apparently wasn't in 1980s culture, with several wrestlers rushing down to the Boogie Woogie Maniac's aid, despite knowing the fact that he attacked them. Backstage, Tony Schiavone has a word with Dick Slater, who addresses the fact that the bounty on his head, issued by James J. Dillon, has recently been picked up by one of the men that we just saw, the Barbarian.
I am not a stepping stone for any man at all. If I gotta be an animal, well, that's exactly what I'm gonna be, Tony.
The Great Kabuki makes his return to the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling area next in singles competition, taking on Mike Fever. And as the Great One makes his way down to the ring, it's seen that he's accompanied by a new manager, Paul Jones, who has seemingly picked up the contract from Gary Hart. Jones himself temporarily joins guest commentary to laugh about the situation we just saw regarding the Boogie Woogie Maniac Jimmy Valiant, especially considering all of that was all part of Jones's plan to lure that goof in to an ambush. Bravo, Mr. Jones, bravo! Mike must have a fever, especially considering his energy and will to compete are completely zapped as he is dominated by the Great Kabuki throughout the entire competition. Just look how majestic the Great Kabuki is, walking the rope and then dropping a chop down onto Fever's head before kicking Fever in the head seconds later and finishing him off with a Boston Crab. The main event of NWA Worldwide Wrestling sees another newcomer, probably acting as yet another bounty hunter for James J. Dillon, who accompanies him down to the ring. The Nature Boy, Buddy Landel, faces off against Keith Larson next. Yes, you heard me right. Buddy Landel also goes by the moniker of the Nature Boy, similar to the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair. And if you ask me, Landel would be a much better representative of the NWA as a whole than Ric Flair. Larson starts the match off by hitting Landel with 2 body slams, which calls for a timeout ringside. Buddy Landel, who I trust completely, especially considering he was hand-picked by James J. Dillon, has taken issue with the fact that Larson used his tights against him when employing those 2 body slams. And the Nature Boy even shows the referee how Larson did it. Of course, the referee is most likely looking out for Don Kernodle's younger brother, probably having received a payout or even threats of violence from the Shame of the USA to comply. Either way, Keith Larson goes on to hit Buddy Landel with another hip toss, which is followed by a dropkick and an arm drag takedown. Landel is able to catch Larson coming off of the ropes with an elbow before latching on a chin lock, which his opponent is able to power out of. The Nature Boy suffers a subsequent backdrop, but does manage to get his boots up just in time as Keith Larson was charging him in the corner. As the Nature Boy, Buddy Landel responds with a massive elbow to get the 3 count. The man of the week, Arn Anderson, is Tony Schiavone's next guest backstage, and even Schiavone himself is impressed with Double A's monumental debut.
That's wrestling right there, Daddy.
Anderson is upset though. because despite promising to be there, his cousin Ole Anderson is nowhere to be seen.
Must have been bad weather, that's all I can tell you, because blood's thicker than water.
What we also didn't see earlier was the fact that half of the NWA World Tag Team Champions in the Raging Bull Manny Fernandez jumping on board the train of not being able to mind one's own business. For some reason inspecting Arn Anderson's fallen foe from earlier before AA takes personal offense at that fact and unleashes on Fernandez. Arn Anderson may have only just arrived in the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling area, but he's already proven that he is going to be a top contender. Now, Manny Fernandez may understandably be going through some tough times, especially considering the other half of the NWA World Tag Team Champions, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, is completely neglecting his duties as a champion. However, that fact alone does not give the Raging Bull the right to treat others the way that he did. I'm personally afraid that if Manuel Fernandez doesn't start showing Arn Anderson the proper respect, AA just might end up beating it out of him. With that, another week of pro wrestling comes to an end. And what a week! Bobby the Brain Heenan and the true giant of the WWF, Big John Studd, accepted Andre the so-called Giant's Body Slam Challenge. Even better, it's set for WrestleMania. So if the 8th wonder of the world can successfully slam Studd, impossible. Not only will he be shown doing so in front of millions of people worldwide, but he will also walk away $15,000 richer. Rowdy Roddy Piper, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, and Cowboy Bob Orton further fueled the flames of war, taking aim again at their WrestleMania main event opponents, the WWF Champion Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. And NWA Television Champion Tully Blanchard turned the tables on the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, letting the challenger know that the champion was now gunning for him, due to the fact that Rhodes placed his hands on Blanchard's Perfect 10 baby doll. If you recall, this year is the 50th anniversary of Jim Crockett Promotions, the company behind both Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and Worldwide Wrestling. All of the drama currently in the WWF is heading towards WrestleMania. So you might be asking yourself, where's all the drama in the NWA heading, Tyler? Silver Star 85, an event which will be held next week on March 16th. So you know what to do. It's time to hit the bell, like the video, and subscribe so you never miss when a new episode is released. And you can also follow me on social media where it is 1985 in pro wrestling all over again. That's all for now, so I'll see you next week. So long. Who goes on to deliver such tremendous amount of pain to who's he facing off against? Pompeii. I have no doubt that you and I are about to witness the biggest temperature, especially considering his energy and will to complete the match, I guess. Letting the challenger know that the champion, why did I point to myself? I'm not a champion.